Alien laughter echoed through the human ship as the Breen fleet surrounded them. Lasers locked on to target the human ship's hull, but they would regret mocking the humans after the HSS Defiance destroyed their entire alien fleet. The HSS Defiance, a lone human exploration vessel captained by Alan Baker, was carrying out a routine survey mission in an uncharted sector of space when they detected hundreds of unknown warships on an intercept course. The warships belonged to the Breen, a hostile alien species infamous throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and brutal conquests of numerous worlds. As the Defiance slowed to a stop, a hail from the Breen flagship filled the human ship's bridge speakers. The cruel, guttural voice of Commander Nesso burst through. "Attention, primitive vessel. You are now the property of the Breen Imperium. Power down your ship and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in your immediate destruction." Captain Baker and his crew exchanged tense glances as they took in the tactical readouts. The Defiance was completely outgunned. Hundreds of Breen warships, each one vastly more powerful than their own small exploration ship, had them surrounded on all sides. The Breen fleet bristled with energy cannons and missile batteries that could rip the Defiance apart in seconds. Baker's mind raced as he weighed his options. If the Breen captured them, they would surely be interrogated, tortured for the location of Earth. And if the Breen found their homeworld, it would mean the end of humanity. Billions of humans, enslaved or exterminated by this cruel alien empire. As the Breen ships closed in, their predatory hulls gleaming in the starlight, Baker made his choice. "This is Captain Alan Baker of the HSS Defiance," he broadcast on all frequencies. "We will not surrender our vessel. Any attempt to board or attack this ship will be met with deadly force." Laughter filled the comm channels as Nesso and his bridge crew reacted to the human captain's defiance. "Very well, humans," Nesso replied, still chuckling. "You have sealed your fate." He cut the transmission as the Breen fleet opened fire. The space around the Defiance lit up with crackling energy beams and the flare of missiles. The human ship shuddered under the impacts, alarms blaring as the shields strained against the onslaught. "Shields down to 20%, the tactical officer shouted over the chaos. "We can't take much more of this." "Hard to port. Full emergency thrust," Baker bellowed, hands gripping his command chair. The Defiance veered away, thrusters burning hard as it fled for a dense nearby asteroid field, the only cover in range. The larger Breen ships couldn't risk following them into the tumbling rocks. As the Breen fleet maneuvered to cut off their escape, Baker turned to his crew, resolve hardening his features. "Listen up. The Breen want to snuff out humanity's light before we've even had a chance to shine. We may just be one small ship, but the future of our entire species rests on what we do in the next few hours." He leaned forward, eyes gleaming in the battle station's lighting. "It's time to show these aliens what human ingenuity and courage can do. It's time to show them why it was a mistake to laugh at us. Now let's find a way to send these Breen bastards running back to whatever holes they crawled out of. The Defiance will be humanity's defiance against the dark. Now everyone, battle stations, and let's get to work." As the crew rushed to devise a desperate plan, they all felt the weight of the moment. They were the first line of defense, perhaps the only line, standing between humanity and the howling dark of subjugation and extinction at the hands of a ruthless alien empire. The battle was just beginning, and the odds seemed impossible. But when pushed to the brink, humans always found a way to defy those odds and emerge unbroken. As the Defiance drifted through the asteroid field, the crew worked furiously to find a way to fight back against the technologically superior Breen. In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Jack Simmons pored over the sensor data from their initial clash with the alien fleet. "There," he exclaimed, jabbing a finger at his display. "See that fluctuation in their shield harmonics? It's small, but if we can match our weapon frequencies to that oscillation, we might be able to punch through." Captain Baker leaned in, studying the readout. "Can we modify our weapons in time? The Breen won't give us much of a breather." Simmons ran a hand through his hair. his face set with willpower. It won't be easy, sir. We'll have to reroute power from the engines and push the emitters way beyond their design specs. There's a good chance they'll burn out after a few shots, but it's our only shot. Baker nodded grimly. Do it. Pull whoever you need from other departments to help. I'll buy you as much time as I can. As Simmons and his team raced to modify the weapons, Baker returned to the bridge. The tactical display showed the Breen ships methodically searching the asteroid field, their sensor beams probing every crevice. They're boxing us in, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight. It's only a matter of time before they sniff us out. Baker stared at the screen, his mind racing. Then he turned to the operations officer. Prep a spread of decoy drones, load them with our sensor signature, and have them mimic our emissions. We'll send them out to draw the Breen away from our real position. The crew worked quickly, programming the drones and launching them into the field. The Breen took the bait, veering off to chase the false signals. Just as the last drone winked out, Simmons's voice crackled over the comm. Modifications complete, sir, but I warn you, we'll likely only get a handful of shots before the emitters fry. Understood, Baker replied. He turned to the helm. Bring us about. It's time we took the fight to the Breen. The Defiance surged out from behind a large asteroid, engines flaring as it accelerated towards the Breen fleet. On the flagship, Commander Nesso stared in disbelief at the lone human ship charging his armada. Have they gone mad? He growled. All ships target that vessel and fire at will. But as the Breen weapons lashed out, the Defiance fired its modified cannons. Lances of energy slammed into the lead Breen ships, piercing their shields as if they weren't even there and carving deep into their hulls. Explosions blossomed across the alien vessels as they reeled from the unexpected assault. It's working! The tactical officer shouted as cheer erupted on the Defiance's bridge. Baker allowed himself a tight smile. Press the attack. Target their flagship. The Defiance wove through the Breen formation, its weapons dealing devastating blows. The flagship loomed ahead, its shields flickering under the human onslaught. But the Defiance was taking hits too. Alarms blared as enemy fire pounded the human ship. In engineering, Simmons wrestled with overloading power relays as the weapon emitters began to glow white-hot. With a final salvo, the Defiance crippled the Breen flagship, explosions rippling across its hull. But the effort was too much. The Defiance's weapons sputtered and died, its engines falling silent as power drained from its systems. Damage report, Baker barked. Weapons offline, engines unresponsive, the ops officer responded, coughing through acrid smoke. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We're dead in the water, sir. Baker slumped in his chair, watching helplessly as Breen reinforcements warped into the system. They had struck a mighty blow, but it seemed it wouldn't be enough. But to everyone's surprise, the Breen ships held their fire. A hail came through, the image of Commander Nesso flickering onto the view screen. He looked battered but resolute. Captain Baker, he began, his voice grudging. I must admit, I underestimated you. Your strategy was impressive, your crew's bravery commendable. I propose a truce. I believe we have much to discuss. Baker eyed the alien warily. What kind of truce? A temporary cessation of hostilities. A chance for both our peoples to catch our breath and reassess. And perhaps an opportunity for an arrangement that could benefit us both. Baker hesitated, weighing his options. The Defiance was in no shape for further combat, and if he could buy time to repair and rearm while gathering intel on the Breen, it could give humanity a fighting chance. Very well, Commander Nesso, I accept your truce provisionally. Let's talk. As the Defiance limped towards the meeting coordinates, Baker couldn't shake a sense of unease. They had survived this battle, but he knew in his bones that this was merely the opening salvo in a much larger war. Earth still hung in the balance, and the crew of the Defiance would need every ounce of ingenuity and courage to ensure humanity's place among the stars. The real fight was just beginning. The HSS Defiance limped through space, its hull scorched and battered from the recent battle. Captain Alan Baker stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the looming shape of the neutral space station growing larger on the monitor. "Status report," Baker demanded, his voice taut with tension. Chief Engineer Jack Simmons's voice crackled over the comm. "We've patched up the worst of it, Captain. But she's hurting bad. We need proper repairs and soon." Baker nodded grimly. "Understood. Take us in, Helm. Nice and easy." As the Defiance docked with a shudder, Baker called his senior staff to the ready room. First Officer Emily Chambers, Simmons, and Science Officer David Cruz filed in, their faces etched with exhaustion and worry. Baker leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "Listen up. We're about to enter negotiations with Commander Naso. Our priority is intel gathering. We need to learn everything we can about Breen weaknesses and motivations without tipping our hand." Cruz spoke up, his brow furrowed. "Sir, what if Neso pushes for information about Earth?" "We lie," Baker said flatly. "As far as Neso knows, we're from an isolated human colony. Earth stays off the table at all costs." The team nodded in agreement as Baker continued. "Time is critical. Every second we spend here is a second the Breen could be moving against Earth. We get what we need and get out. Understood?" A chorus of "Yes, sir" echoed through the room. As they made their way to the negotiation chamber, Baker's mind raced. The fate of humanity rested on what happened in the next few hours. The doors slid open, revealing Commander Naso and his entourage. The Breen leader's cybernetic implants glinted in the harsh lighting as he turned to face the humans. "Ah, the primitive apes arrive at last," Naso sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. Baker forced a neutral expression. "Commander Neso, let's get down to business, shall we?" As the negotiations began, it became clear that Naso had no intention of treating the humans as equals. He paced the room, gesticulating wildly as he made demands. "You will provide us with a full accounting of your technology and resources," Neso barked. "Perhaps then we will consider sparing your miserable lives." Baker's eyes sharp, but he kept his voice level. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Commander. As I've explained, we represent a small, isolated colony. We simply don't have access to that kind of information." Neso's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that? Your tactics in our previous encounter suggest otherwise." As Naso ranted, Cruz discreetly activated the scanner hidden in his uniform. His eyes widened as data streamed across the device's small screen. Leaning close to Baker, Cruz whispered urgently, "Captain, I'm detecting a vulnerability in their cybernetic systems. If we could introduce a targeted virus." Baker nodded almost imperceptibly, his mind already formulating a plan. Meanwhile, in the bowels of the station, Chambers and Simmons worked feverishly. Their fingers flew across control panels as they searched for a way into the station's systems. "There!" Chambers exclaimed. "A backdoor in the security protocols. If we can exploit it..." Simmons grinned. "We'd have control of the whole damn station." Back in the negotiation room, tensions were reaching a breaking point. Neso banged his head on the table, cybernetic implants pulsing with rage. "Enough of these games," he roared. "You will cooperate, or I will order your ship destroyed where it sits." Baker held up his hands in a placating gesture. "All right, Commander, you win. We'll provide you with some technical data. It's not much, but it's all we have." Neso's face twisted into a triumphant sneer as Baker transmitted the data packet. But his victory was short-lived. The moment the transmission completed, Neso and his lieutenants began to twitch and jerk. Their cybernetic implants sparked and sputtered as Cruz's virus tore through their systems. In that instant, all hell broke loose. The doors burst open as human security forces stormed in, weapons raised. The few organic Breen guards were caught completely off guard, overwhelmed in seconds. Baker strode forward, grabbing the convulsing Neso by the collar. "Listen closely, Commander. Here's how this is going to work. You're going to order your ships to stand down and allow us safe passage. In exchange, we let you live. Understood?" Neso glared up at Baker, his eyes filled with impotent rage. But with his cybernetics failing and his forces neutralized, he had no choice. Fine, he spat. You win this round, human. But mark my words, this is not nearly finished. Baker didn't waste a second. All hands, prepare for immediate departure. The Defiance's engines roared to life as they disengaged from the station. On the console, a wave of Breen reinforcements dropped out of warp. Helm, get us out of here, Baker ordered. Maximum warp. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the Defiance leapt to warp, leaving the furious Breen fleet in their wake. They had survived by the skin of their teeth, but Baker knew the real challenge was just beginning. Somehow, they had to make it back to Earth and sound the alarm before the Breen struck again. As the Defiance hurtled through space, Baker turned to his exhausted but resolute crew. Well done, everyone. But our mission's not nearly finished. Let's get to work. The Defiance shuddered as it pushed deeper into the stellar nursery, its modified shield straining against the onslaught of radiation and ionized gas. On the bridge, Captain Baker gripped his chair, sweat beading on his forehead. Status report, he barked. Shields holding at 62%, Cruz responded, his fingers flying over his console. But they're degrading faster than anticipated. We've got maybe 30 minutes before they fail completely. Baker nodded grimly. Understood. Helm, keep us moving. We need to put as much distance between us and those Breen ships as possible. In the brig, Commander Nesso thrashed against his restraints, his cybernetic implants sparking and sputtering. You fools, he roared. You've doomed us all. The radiation will fry your primitive systems just as surely as it's frying mine. Baker strode into the brig, his face a mask of steel. Maybe so, Nesso, but we're not the ones with an entire fleet dead in space. Now let's talk about Earth. Nesso's eyes narrowed. What about it? Just another backwater world full of savages, I'm sure. But Baker caught the flicker of uncertainty in the alien's gaze. You don't know where it is, do you? You have no idea where humanity really comes from. Nesso's silence was all the confirmation Baker needed. Meanwhile, in engineering, Simmons cursed as he rerouted power through overtaxed systems. Come on, baby, he muttered. Just hold together a little longer. A console exploded in a shower of sparks, sending a crewman sprawling. Simmons hauled him to his feet. You okay, Thompson? The young engineer nodded, coughing. Yes, sir, but we can't take much more of this. Back on the bridge, Cruz's eyes lit up. Captain, I have refined the virus. If we can get close enough to broadcast it to the disabled Breen ships, we might be able to extract their navigational data. It could give us the intel we need to warn Earth. Baker didn't hesitate. Do it. Helm, bring us about. We're going back in. The Defiance wheeled around, plunging back towards the field of crippled Breen vessels. Alarms blared as radiation levels spiked. Shields failing, Cruz shouted. We've got seconds before total collapse. Now, Cruz, Baker ordered, transmit the virus. Cruz slammed his hand down on the console. A pulse of energy surged from the Defiance, washing over the nearest Breen ship. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then data began streaming across Cruz's screen. I've got it, he exclaimed. Downloading now. But their victory was short-lived. The Defiance bucked violently, systems failing across the ship. We're losing containment, Simmons' voice crackled over the comm. We need to get out of here now. Helm, get us clear of the nursery, Baker commanded. Maximum warp as soon as we're clear. The Defiance limped out of the stellar nursery, trailing plasma and debris. The moment they cleared the radiation field, Baker gave the order. Engage warp drive. The stars streaked into lines as the battered ship leapt to faster-than-light speed. They'd escaped by the skin of their teeth, but the real race was just beginning. Somewhere out there, the rest of the Breen Empire was mobilizing, and Earth remained blissfully unaware of the storm racing towards it. Baker turned to his exhausted crew. Good work, everyone. But we're not out of the woods yet. Cruz, start analyzing that Breen data. We need to find the fastest way home. As the Defiance hurtled through space, Baker couldn't shake the feeling that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and they were the only ones who could sound the alarm. The HSS Defiance lurched out of the stellar nursery, its hull scorched and battered. On the bridge, Captain Alan Baker gripped the arms of his command chair as the ship shuddered violently. "Damage report!" he barked. Chief Engineer Jack Simmons's voice crackled over the comm, thick with exhaustion. "It's bad, Captain. Life support's failing and we're venting atmosphere in multiple sections. Warp drives shot to hell." Baker's mind focused. Options? "There's a hidden outpost a few light years from here," First Officer Emily Chambers said, her fingers flying over a console. "If we can make it there—" "Do it," Baker ordered. He turned to face the rest of the bridge crew. "Listen up. We've bloodied the Breen's nose, but they'll be back. We need to buy time." As the Defiance limped through space, Baker descended to the brig. Commander Nesso sat in his cell, cybernetic implants flickering erratically. "Your fleet is gone, Nesso," Baker said coldly. "Tell me about your military command center." Nesso laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "You think this changes anything? The Breen Empire will crush you like insects." Baker leaned in close, his voice low and dangerous. "We just took out an entire fleet. Imagine what we'll do next." Hours passed in a haze of threats and psychological warfare. Finally, Nesso broke. "The coordinates," he whispered, defeated. "I'll give you the coordinates." But as Baker turned to leave, Nesso called out. "It won't matter. The defense grid is impenetrable. The only way to destabilize it is from within, and that would be suicide." Baker's mind raced as he returned to the bridge. He found Chambers bent over a tactical display with David Cruz. "We have the coordinates," Baker announced, "but a frontal assault is impossible." Cruz looked up, his eyes blazing with commitment. "What about a shuttle? If we could get close enough with a warhead." Baker nodded grimly. "Exterminatus maneuver. It's our only shot." The next hours were a blur of frantic preparations. Cruz and a small team readied the shuttle, loading it with a Class A thermionic warhead. As they prepared to depart, Baker addressed the volunteers. "What you're about to do, there's no coming back from this, but it's our only chance to save Earth." Cruz met his gaze steadily. "We know, sir. It's been an honor." The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the cold expanse of space. As the small craft launched, Baker returned to the bridge, his heart heavy. Chambers worked furiously at her station, coordinating with the distant outpost. "Sir, multiple Breen signatures on approach." Baker's voice was steel. "Launch the shuttle, now!" On the tiny craft, Cruz and his team braced themselves as Breen weapons fire erupted around them. Their reinforced shields flared and sparked, but held. "Almost there," Cruz growled through gritted teeth. "Just a few more seconds." The shuttle screamed towards the massive Breen installation, alarms blaring. At the last possible instant, they breached the outer defenses. On the Defiance's tactical display, a blinding flash erupted. The energy spike was off the charts, then nothing. Static filled the screens where the Breen command center had been. Baker sagged in his chair, the weight of what they'd done settling over him. He keyed the comm. "This is Captain Baker to the human outpost. We need immediate assistance. Repeat, immediate assistance required." As medical teams swarmed the Defiance, Baker made his way to the brig one last time. Nesso sat motionless, his eyes vacant. "It's over," Baker said simply. Nesso looked up, his arrogance shattered. "How?" he whispered. Baker didn't answer. He turned and walked away, leaving the broken Breen commander to contemplate the new reality of the galaxy. On the observation deck, Baker stared out at the stars. They'd won this battle, but at a terrible cost, and he knew with grim certainty that this was only the beginning.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.